Before I get the video started, I just want to say thank you to EFB Motorsports. They've supplied me with this center vent block off gauge bezel. Just want to say thanks to those guys for making some really cool 3D printed products. What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to share a video with you on how to hook up some gauges in your 8891 Civic or CRX. Had a bunch of people asking me if I could show a little bit of how I hook them up. I'm going to run that with you today, get these installed. I had them set up when I completed the dashboard painting, but I had never had a chance to hook them up. Main reason was because I was missing these mounting brackets. I got these gauges from a good friend of mine. He just wanted me to remove him from his car, and in turn he gave them to me. I have an oil pressure, water temp, and a fuel pressure. These are the Glowshift, like a 7-color gauge. It's pretty easy to hook them up. I have the luxury of already having previous owner had them in an EG, and they were already wired up and they were plugged in together, so all the power wires ran together and all of the ground wires run together. So that makes it really easy for me to install them. I think the hardest part today is going to be installing the sensors, which it's really not that difficult either. You have the one I just showed you here. This is the oil pressure unit. This is actually a sandwich plate which goes on the back of where your current oil filter goes. You're going to have this fitting, which this one actually attaches to where the oil filter goes now, and then this one goes through. It's going to be, actually it's reversed, I'm sorry. The flat side goes out for the oil filter. It's going to be just like that. And then your oil filter is now going to go on here, and of course we're going to want to clean this off. Another reason I didn't have these installed was I didn't want to trust using the old O-ring. It had been squeezed off a little bit right there. So you can order these from the Glowshift website. I just got two just in case. I'd rather have a spare just sitting around. They're like $3 each. Same with those brackets. I ordered all of them for like $15 for all these. I have all the correct components, so I wanted to get that installed also. Fuel pressure sending unit. This one is very easy if you still have your stock fuel filter. It's basically just going, oops, I dropped the little ring. It's basically just going to go on top of this now. We're going to put it right here on this one. We're going to remove that one. And it actually has the exact same fitting. I don't think, no, this one's too large. The fitting here is too large for that little fitting on top. So that one goes there, and everything else is already hooked up. I just need to feed the wires through the dash and get them hooked up. So if you look at Glowshift's instructions, you're going to have a ground. Sorry about my thumb. You're going to have a ground wire, which I just did here for testing. You're going to have a power with ignition, and also another one for the lights. This one is a constant, and then this one is on and off with ignition. You can easily use your fuse box. Just throw it down under here on those two. And when you do that, where's my keys? Let me show you. They're already powered on. I just wanted to test it. The reason both of these jump to the end is because they're not grounded. Say for instance the water pressure. I'm going to touch it to the ground wire and you'll see that. It just needs to be grounded and the sensor plugged in, so once I do that it'll be fixed. So very easy to install those. Now there's one extra wire. You have the orange. This orange is supposed to be spliced into something with, you can use a fuse, and you could actually have like an expandable fuse which comes off your headlights. I don't like to use this because I feel like for me these gauges are kind of dark. And I use this car at the track, and it's generally daytime, and it's generally super bright out, sunny. I realized on the supercharged hatch when I had an oil pressure one hooked up, I didn't like it because I like to drive with my headlights on. And when you do that, it dulls them. So I'm not going to hook up the orange wire. It's really easy though. You can get a spliceable fuse and run it to your headlights. That way, when you turn your headlights on, it'll actually apply power, and then it makes these a little darker. But that's not something I'm going to hook up. on this just for the reasons stated. So I'm gonna get started first. I'm gonna do the oil pressure. I need to change the oil, but I'm not gonna do that yet. I just wanna make sure it's hooked up and not leaking. I'd rather do that before I change the oil. So just get your oil filter removed, clean this up, install your new gasket. I'm gonna probably put just a little bit of RTV on here so it stays in place. And then we'll get the oil filter put back on. And the reason I'm starting it here is I'll be able to just feed the wire through and then plug it into the back of the gauges. So I put RTV on 4 corners. It's been sitting here for a minute or two. Just don't want that falling off or potentially getting kinked while I install it. You're gonna need a 27mm socket. That's how we're gonna put this onto the fitting. And then just tighten that like you would. I'd probably say a little bit more, just a little bit more than you would an oil filter, but not much. And then you should be good to go. Okay, so first, let me show you. We got this one hooked up. Really easy. It was not difficult at all to get that one installed. I put the original oil filter back on, drip a little bit of oil down, I'll clean it up. Around the wire up through the firewall. Second sensor is the fuel pressure. Did these two because they were the easiest. I don't have to drain the coolant. And it just removed the old fitting, which was a 17mm. This one has a supplied 17mm. Make sure you apply those brass little crush washers, and then I just ran the wires through the hole right there that I already have. Lastly, we're going to hook up the water temp sensor. There's not a spot to put this already on our cars. Previous owner on the other car, he never wired it up, but somebody else did. They plugged it in to right there. It's not the same thread pitch, but they somehow did it. I don't like the idea of doing that because now you eliminate the bleed valve. So what I'm going to use, I've had this one laying around for a while. I ordered it a long time ago. I wanted to use it. It essentially goes like this. See how you cut your line and you apply that in there? This has the provision for that sensor to go into. We're just going to cut the hose and plug it in. I think I'm going to plug it in right here. I thought about maybe putting it underneath the distributor, but I think I'll just put it here. That way it's right after the thermo housing, and then it's close for the ground wire. I can just run that to the ground here on the back of the thermo housing. Here I went ahead and just cut the hose where I wanted to install the fitting. I was going to chop off like about an inch here just to make it for the room, but when installing this, let me get it set up. Let me push that one in there and this one on that side. I actually like how it fits. The hose seems to come straight up since it pushes it out about an inch. Doesn't seem to be any issue. I'm going to leave it as is. It pulls a little further away from the wiring there. And the thing that's nice is this one, I believe they offer different sizes. This one I got in a 30mm, and it fits these hoses perfect. It's snug, but it's obviously not tight, and I'm just going to tighten up the hose clamps, and we should be done getting all these gauges hooked up. Water temp is now hooked up, grounded, power wire fed. At that point, if you're confident in having everything hooked up, I am here. I tested it right now. You can go ahead and mount whatever sort of gauge pod setup you're using. And the rest of the wiring, I am going to loom together and just zip tie it and tuck it up behind the dash somewhere. Let me get that finished up. All right, so I'm pretty confident everything is set to go. I went ahead and just zip tied the wires to the existing wiring harness. It's a lot of extra slack. I think that just accounts for if you want to mount it on a pillar or whatever. I'm leaving it alone just because I don't want to shorten those. I think it's perfectly fine up there. And if I ever decide to sell or remove these gauges, it still has the original wiring. But let's test it out. Let's get this started up. Fuel pressure already at 10 right there. You notice these two went back to 0 because they are now grounded. Oil pressure at 80 on startup. Water temperature obviously not above 100 degrees yet. And fuel pressure sitting at 30. Looks like we're set to go, guys. These gauges have the ability to change color if you want. Fortunately, when I disconnect my battery, they will always reset and go back to this original blue. I like the color anyway. Looks really cool. Oh, this is like when it fluctuates on it. It changes on its own. So that'll be it, guys. Hope that helps you out. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. I can try to answer them. Pretty simple install. The only thing I'm going to do now is check for any leaks. Make sure nothing is leaking for where the oil pressure sending unit is, gas, and also water. But I think all of that should be tidied up. I don't think there's going to be any issues with how tight I've gotten them. The gas looks fine. Oil, I will check in a moment. Thanks for hanging out today, guys. We'll see you next time.